You just ate there on Thursday? Yeah.
Correct.
It's
It's
really
Colorado
good.
and Iowa. We're gonna get started.
I'll tell you who that one. Colorado and Iowa?
Like in between Iowa and Warren, or Evans.
Yeah,
actually, if you
cool,
want to
that's
see
cool.
more.
Okay.
Okay.
Go to work.
So we are here for session 8. We're gonna talk about schedules and routines. My name is Alicia Boston. I'm the Center Director for Bright Horizons at Greenwood Plaza. I have been in early childhood education for over 25 years. I've been with Bright Horizons for 15, actually celebrating my 15th year in March.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Exciting. So let's go around the table and introduce yourself and tell me a little bit of something about yourself. Who would like to start?
My name's Debbie, and I work here at Bright Horizons. I'm a preschool teacher, the 3 to 4 basically right now. And looking forward to the summer.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Debbie.
You're welcome.
I'm Abby. I work at the Centennial Montessori School. I work with toddlers. I was supposed to say one interesting thing about me.
Yeah, just share something interesting.
We just had Slava, which is our saint day, and it is a full day of eating, drinking, and talking. And I've never been so full that I haven't eaten in 2 days.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of food.
Yeah.
That's a lot of food.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Nadeau, and I am a certified Pyramid Plus trainer. I'm here to support Alicia through her certification process. And I'm graduating!
I'm Adriana, I work at FITS. I am with preschool, and I'm looking forward to the summer because I get temporary guardianship with my goddaughter.
So exciting.
Yeah. My name is Lisa, and I work for Fitzsimmons, and I work with toddlers, 2-year-olds. And I'm looking forward to my vacation.
What's that?
Where are you going?
I'm going to California.
Fun.
Huh?
Can I go?
Yeah, this is my birthday.
Carry on.
My name is Alex. I work at Denver Athletic Club. Looking forward to definitely this Saturday coming up because my brother graduates college. But after a month of that, I should be taking my lead teacher position soon. Congratulations. That's wonderful. Okay. Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you for coming again this evening, and we are going to talk about schedules and routines for session 8. And with that, we're going to jump right into it. I know that we talk about this every session, but again, we are so grateful and thankful for our Pyramid Plus funders who help to support a lot of the evidence-based practices that, have been embedded in our sessions each week. That costs money, costs time, a lot of skill and knowledge from people far smarter than I am. And so I just want to take a moment to thank all of our funders for the Pyramid Plus program. Tonight's agenda is going to be, we're going to discuss our learning objectives. We're going to talk about responsive care and routines. We're going to have an activity around responsive routines inventory. We're going to look at developing a daily schedule. Then we'll do a second activity, balancing your schedule. Then we're going to talk about the routines to the third power, routines within routines within routines. We'll have some slides that show us some visual supports, which are always exciting to have for ideas. We're going to partner with families, and then we'll do our third activity, which is our thought seeds. We'll wrap up the evening with our Q&I and our evaluations. So today, keep saying that, tonight's learning objective is that we're going to be able to explain the importance of responsive schedules and routines for very young children. We're going to gain some strategies for providing responsive routines and predictable schedules. And we're going to learn how to implement management techniques to assist children in their learning environments. As you guys know, we have our ground rules over here. We can add to the ground rules at any time. And we have, on my right, we have the parking lot. So if there's any questions, any additional information that we would like to add to in later discussion, we can always place that in the parking lot. You do have a copy of all of your session handouts, and we'll go through that. The first being the responsive routines inventory. A couple of pages on that one. Making life easier. A really great article about preparing your child for the diapering change. Then we've got a handout, Understanding Routines and Classroom Schedules. We have our schedule, blank schedule to practice on for our activities, our balancing home routines activity. We have a take-home activity, routines within routines sheet in there. We have, I'm on the daily routine page now. Okay. We've got a LEAP preschool daily schedule. I think a really great example of a LEAP schedule. With some descriptions of what each schedule time is, the progress of that, what that entails within each learning time. We've got some tips and ideas for making visuals to support young children with challenging behavior. Really great visual tips for making those visuals in your classroom. Just keeps going. A lot of resources for this session. Then we get to handout 8.8. It looks like this. It actually says 8.8 on it. And this is our infant toddler routine checklist and then preschool schedules and routines checklist. We have our supportive environment action plan, which we'll use for an activity, our handout for resources, and then our thought seeds. Any questions on any of the handouts? Okay, great. We all know where the bathrooms are located, the water, all that fun stuff. Okay. So for section 8, schedules and routines, we're in that second tier of the Pyramid Plus model. Session 7, we did talk about the physical environment. Session 8, we're going to talk about schedules and routines tonight. Session 9, expectations and transitions as we move up. And remember that while Pyramid Plus is the model for what we're going to talk about, there's always resources and support through the Building Blocks and LEAP program as well. Some of the dynamics of the sessions are broken down where classroom organization covers sessions 7, 8, and 9 for visual supports, routines and schedules for tonight, and then session 9 will move into transitions. Classroom management, where tonight we talk about the routines within a routine is going to be it's in session 8, and then moving into session 9 we'll talk about rules and expectations and giving effective directions. And this responsive care continuum is just a really great visual aid so that you can see that responsive care is a continuum. So as children get older, Adults need to gain skills in management, while acknowledging that all children need responsive care. As the child gets older, that dynamic for managing that responsive care is going to change. And in a lot of cases, we are going to need to reassess some of our skills and knowledge and how to best support that change and development for the children. Okay, so develop a schedule that promotes child engagement. So when we talk about schedules and routines, we've got a timeline. So you're balancing activities. You want to make sure that throughout your day you're not engaging in all loud, high energy dynamics. You want to make sure you're incorporating some of those quiet activities as well. Not every child is going to really be excited about a level 10 energy. That can be really overwhelming. It can be overwhelming for adults as well too. So you want to make sure that you're balancing small group versus large group. That dynamic helps with a little bit more of that one-on-one. With large group, how much time, this is I think the easiest way for me to think about it, but when you're in a large group setting, how much time does it take to get to the child at the end of the circle when you're asking individual questions? How much time are we making each child wait to be able to participate in large group? When you're in a smaller group, the child gets a lot more opportunities to be engaged and to participate and respond to whatever learning style is happening in the classroom. So remember that it's teacher directed as well as child directed, and for Bright Horizons employees, that's a really big piece because we're all about emergent curriculum. So make sure that you are listening to those conversations that children are having in the classroom. That's going to tell you their excitement level on new learning projects and subject matters, and it really provides you with so many opportunities for activities, language, math, science, the whole range of hands-on experiences. Yes?
And I think that sometimes what I've noticed when it comes to Montessori, that oftentimes we get a little bit stuck more heavily on child-directed and we forget some of that teacher-directed component. And so I think that, because we do the work cycle and children do a lot of independent work, I think also that interaction, right, of kind of combining some of that small group work, like checking in with children that are working independently in their work is always good too, which is not the typical model of Montessori.
Right.
But when you're also combining the signature practices that you have, that teacher-child interaction piece is important. So you want to have a really good balance of that teacher-child direction. And if you're not Montessori, we typically get stuck in being heavier on the teacher-directed side because a lot of us were brought into the field thinking that we're school and we have to guide for this long time, where we need to be aware of those children's interests and being able to give them opportunities to direct the learning process. So it can be difficult either way to get that really good balance between the two. Does that make sense?
Quick question for the group. Show of hands if you provide an emergent curriculum in your classroom. It's not a right or wrong question. It's just I'm just curious. Is this
child interest, child directed?
Is this a new term for some of you? Yeah. So it's really designed to be an open and inclusive environment for children. I think studies show that children will retain more information through that learning process, and they will be so much more engaged when it's material that they brought to us rather than us bringing it to them. Think in terms of how many times every single year the teacher is, okay, at the beginning of the school year, we talk about fall. And then we move into dinosaurs. And then we move into, pumpkins. And if we keep that calendar, where's the fun? Where's the excitement? Plus, even for the teacher, you're spitting out and regurgitating the same materials over and over. What about challenging ourselves as much as we want to challenge the children as well too? So I really encourage you to look at that dynamic of child-directed and teacher-directed dynamics by exploring the emergent curriculum a little bit. And then remember that routines, there needs to be some structure to it. So there needs to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. So why do, wait, I'm off. So schedules and routines. We want to make sure that we teach children the schedule. We want to establish a routine and we follow it consistently. How many times have we had a child in our classroom where if we disrupt that consistency, do we begin to see some reaction from that? Maybe behavior, maybe emotions, any dynamic that's going to have a child feel like they're out of their comfort zone. Teach children the expectations of each routine. So when we, in some of our classrooms, when you hear the bell ring, the children know to pause and listen to the next directions. Maybe it's a 5-minute warning. Maybe it's, to prepare them that we'll be moving into our next transition. Maybe a teacher got, the all center page and we are moving into, a practice drill or something, So when you're teaching the children the expectations of each routine, make sure that you're following through with that, okay? When changes are necessary, prepare children ahead of time. Now, we can't always do that for every dynamic. We can't control weather, we can't control, factors outside of our school, but inside, when changes are necessary, we as adults like to have that heads up, children do as well. They do. And they'll process it in their own way, but having that conversation, and I know that because this is our second time teaching this class, I know I've had my teachers already implementing the schedules and routines dynamic in their classroom, and it has been incredible. Visual schedules for the children, they get to take ownership of moving the indicator and knowing what's coming next. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but we'll talk about that in the next few slides.
Well, as well as the signature practice choice boards that we're supposed to have in all the classrooms. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues last night, actually, because we're developing a new social emotional training for everybody.
Yeah.
And we talked about choice boards. And one of the signature practices of Bright Horizons is that each classroom has a choice board. And my understanding is that's a really big deal for Rachel Robertson, our VP. And it's interesting because I've been in multiple centers and I don't see them anywhere, so.
Children, provide children who have difficulty with following the schedule with an individualized support plan. So allowing them to have the opportunity we had a child in the classroom that she actually wore a bracelet that the teacher made her, and it had laminated visual cards on her wrist, so that when she needed to indicate a need to us or a schedule dynamic for us, she was able to indicate to the teacher by visually showing the card. So why do routines and schedules support social emotional development? Well, because there's 10 reasons. They meet the basic needs of the child. They're an important part of each day. They occur many times throughout the day. They provide opportunities for interaction, stimulate learning, provide predictability, opportunities for self-help skills, which is a big one. Develop a sense of security and control. They support competence and confidence, and they can occur at any time, home, center, community. Does anybody have any story that they would care to share that could prove our point here?
Well, I think you said it.
Stimulate learning?
I think that them knowing the schedule is a learning aspect for themselves. Also, I mean, if we're off on our schedule, they'll tell them. They'll
Oh, yes.
fix it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll
Or
correct it. They
if-
know something they count on, they
Yeah.
look to.
If a teacher that does not work in that classroom regularly and they're in there for the day, they will let, the children will let that teacher know. Absolutely. Alex?
Constantly throughout the day, like in the morning, all right guys, you know, we did circle time, now we're gonna go do naps, and then we're gonna go outside. No! Okay, then what are we gonna do? We gotta do the question of the day.
Yeah.
You know, just all through the day, we're messing it up, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not what we do now, that's not what we do now.
Well, that's great
So it
because
embeds in the-
it does. It's
Keep
embedding
on
that
going.
learning and you're forcing them to repeat it,
Right.
which is great, right?
I work in an infant classroom, and we had one little girl who was the first in her family, and so mom was really having a hard time being consistent, so she was trying all these different things, and JoJo was just kind of a wreck for a while, and so we sat down with mom and we were like, she needs this at this time, this at this, like set up a schedule, and she's been on that schedule for like 6 months now. Granted, with a few accommodations here or there, as she gets a little older, but ever since then, she's been able to like make friends better and like interact with the other kids better and the teachers better, and so just seeing how a consistent schedule can affect their emotional well-being.
It really does, and it starts at the time of birth because for our program, we provide what we call a family intake meeting, and it provides an opportunity, and this could be for an infant, and this could be for a 4-year-old. It doesn't matter the age of the child, but it provides an opportunity for the parent to ask some questions and orientation of the classroom dynamic, what to expect from us, but then it allows us to get to know the child's schedule, what routines do they have, what are some indicators that, you know, in a new environment and in a new transition, what are some indicators that their routine might be thrown a little bit, and the closest that we can get to that dynamic, then the better they're gonna thrive and really just grow and flourish, making friends, branching out of that comfort zone and you know, and really exploring that dynamic. It's so important. So thank you for sharing. So responsive routines are, you know, the sleeping, the meals, the toiletry care, bathing, brushing our teeth, arrivals, departures, group activities. They can all happen at home or in the center at any time. So providing the opportunity for those responsive routines will really help. And we have videos that, you know, that we'll watch to really kind of drive that point home as well. So what are the components of a routine? Predictable routines help older infants and toddlers organize themselves around what's coming next. It gives them a sense of security and allows them to relax and explore their environment. We know this very much. Schedule tend to mean time. However, with infants and toddlers, it's more important that it's sequential. Because, as we've said before, children don't understand the concept of time, but they do understand the concept of tasks and routines in order. Okay. Caregivers maintain the overall routine as consistently as possible while flexing it to accommodate individuals, which is great. That's what Ryan talked about. We made accommodations and modifications as she became older because her sleep schedule is going to change as she's getting older. Her meals are going to change as she gets older. So understanding that dynamic is valuable input. And children learn about the people and the way that the world works through their daily routines. So what people say, what they do, how they say it, and how they do what they do, all of this is curriculum. So So we have an example of a routine during nap time. So for a young infant, if we are placing the child in a swaddle or a sleep sack, they know once that comes on, when it gets placed on them, they know it's time for sleep. If we're sitting in the rocking chair, if we're rocking, then they know that it's their calm time, their quiet time, ready to prepare for sleep. Maybe there's soft, quiet music or white noise being played. This is going to be different from, say, a mobile infant or a toddler where we're playing, we turn the lights down, we turn on the soft music for nap time, we can rub the child's back, they see their, with toddlers, our toddlers, they see the, after lunch, we pull out the mats, and they know that once they see the mats, that they get to go and get their sheets and their blankets. The teacher helps assist them to get their sleep mat prepared, and that it'll be nap time. And then for the preschooler, we have the opportunity to be a lot more verbal and giving directions. So we'll say, okay, we're going to have lunch, and then like Alex said, what do we do next after lunch? We go to the bathroom, we wash our hands, and then what do we do after that? And then we find our blankets and sheets, and we have and our children are split, because we have classrooms that are 3, 4, 5. So half the class will say, well, I'm a rester and I'm a napper, and then they know which way they go. They know which direction that their next step will take. So again, calm music, laying on their cot, rubbing their back if needed. So we're going to watch a video here, and this video is a mother describing her baby's bath time routine. It's from Johnson & Johnson's baby series about infant routines. And what I want you to reflect on is the importance of familiar and consistent routines, such as this one. Okay?
When I was pregnant, I had both arms while supporting. I wrap them in a towel and dry them off.
Okay, so tell me how you think this routine might benefit the infant and the mother.
It gives them an opportunity to bond.
Bonding? Yeah.
I think it's calming, and it's also if it's the same kind of routine all the time, it gives them, it lets them know what to expect, and I think it builds confidence.
Okay. And how might this type of routine for an infant influence them as a preschooler?
It's gonna stick with them all through the whole time because it's doing it from birth. And it's something that sticks with you, just for us, like brushing your teeth, You do it when you're little and you keep going. Once you have to do that habit for so many days, it just sticks with you.
Okay. So then how do we feel like this type of routine would relate to challenging behavior?
One that doesn't, like they have ADHD or maybe they don't sit still well, they even when they have like be a challenge, or if they're kind of claustrophobic, that small space. So if they know what to expect, if they know roughly how long they have to be in there to do the same thing every time, it's less of a fight. It's less traumatic, because they know they're not going to be like, they're not held down. I'm just supporting you.
Right. Okay, great. So what are some challenges that families or providers experience when providing responsive routines such as this?
Time, I think time is a challenge sometimes, we don't feel like you have enough time to
Yeah, it may be,
follow routines or whatever, you just feel like you gotta get it done.
yeah, we can't always guarantee that we're gonna be available for bath night or I mean, as my children got older, it got really hard once they got involved with after school things, just to even have dinner together. We got violin lessons, we got diving lessons, we got after school clubs, we got, you want those routines, for social skills, for confidence, support, love, you know, all those dynamics, but we can't always guarantee that they're always gonna happen. That doesn't mean anything negative, it just means that, that ultimately there's always gonna be positive from creating routines. We may not always be able to get to them every day. I tell teachers too, do not stress yourself out when you see that, you know, the dynamic of the classroom, they are just maybe having, you know, they've been inside for an entire week because of the rain, and we're getting claustrophobic inside, and all of my routine practices are just not working. That's okay. We can be flexible. You know, that we're allowed to have that flexibility inside of it. We want to make sure that that's not our norm. Because then it's inconsistent and it's unpredictable.
I think that routines allow for that, you know, like when you have routines, it's easier to have a time where you're not in the routine, you know what I mean? It's, you can be more flexible.
Yeah.
Because you've had that set standard and you still know kind of what to expect and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not totally chaotic.
So with responsive routines, we've got handout 8.1 that does talk about those routines for infants and toddlers that around feeding, diapering, sleeping, greeting, and we're going to have a small 5 to 10 minute activity here. We're going to do it as a small group, and what I'd like for you to do is to use your handout to examine your routine that you've chosen, and then use the following guided questions to reflect. How could this tool be used to help families, caregivers, teachers, and administrators plan for smooth, responsive routines? And what are some environmental supports needed, if applicable, to meet these goals? Okay, any questions on that? Responsive routines? Yep. Yep, the
green ones.
The green ones, the ones right on top. Yep.
I got it, I remember.
Okay, let's discuss as a group some of the responses that you came up with the questions. How could this tool be used to help families, caregivers, teachers, and administrators plan for smooth, responsive care routines?
Having any kind of schedule for any kind of child or anybody is, you know, key point to help them live their life and help them grow. Because if they don't have this schedule, they're gonna be all over the place. Not even just the kids, but the parents, they're gonna be driven crazy. If you don't have time for activities, you know, or do this, then you're just gonna be going in circles.
I had a friend that nap time was the hardest part of our day because he was ADHD and he really struggled with the calming down portion. So he was my friend that always had a job. So at lunch, he got to help pass out everything, and he would help if we composted. So he would help make sure we were putting the right things in compost. He would help take out the mats. So giving him step by step, he knew every part of my routine as a teacher to oversee. But him being my helper, by the time we were done with lunch, he was done. He was worked, and he only slept for like 15 minutes. But knowing that he had something to do instead of just stand there and be like, oh my god, it helped him settle down and be ready for the rest time. That was his little routine, was helping.
I'm smiling to play off of what you said. It takes me back to when my kids were babies and my mother would come in and watch for a day or whatever, and I would come back, and for a week I would have to be in a tizzy because the kid
Because
was-
grandma said yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I would say, Mom, you know,
he's got a schedule, you gotta get,
Children don't have schedules. Yes, they do. But yeah, I mean, even one day of not being on that routine just
Yeah.
can wreak havoc. That's why I'm saying.
when it comes to nap times, it's like you say, my kids have always, since we moved out here to Colorado, my kids have always went to bed at 8 o'clock. And when family comes over and they're up, the next day they're all grumpy. And I'm like, my mom's like, you cannot put them to sleep that early. How can they sleep? I'm like, they need this many hours of sleep. So the routines are so important because you see it the next day. If they don't go to sleep on time, the next day they're all over the place.
Well, your body gets adjusted to that dynamic. If you are at a young age, mom and dad say, okay, bedtime is 7:30, 8 o'clock. Your body gets used to like, okay, I'm getting 12 hours of sleep, and if I don't, you're all going to hear about it, and so it's adults that we have that routine, and then as we become that older teenager, young adult, we start messing up with our own routines and we sabotage ourselves. But it's absolutely visible to see the next day when even a slight change, something that you think would be very minor, like sure, okay, you can go to bed at 9 o'clock. That 1 hour makes the difference, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So just like a little example, I have a little girl in my class who I didn't know mom was out of town this whole week. And dad has been doing everything. So, and this whole week she has been coming in, she's been like super whiny, like not having listening ears, hitting friends, and I'm like, what is going on? So dad said, oh, mom's out of town, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Light bulb.
Yeah, like 'cause she would tell me, my dad, I guess because they eat dinner and then it's bath time. Well, I guess dad gave her a bath and then they ate dinner and like she's
Oh,
thrown
boy.
out, so she was
Oh,
telling
boy.
me everything that dad did.
Poor
dad.
He's trying.
So dad looked frazzled, she's like a mess,
Well,
so.
think about that, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, Adriana, because think about the difference that the child is depending on which parent drops them off in the morning.
Mhm.
Is it an easy separation every time mom drops off? Yes, but then dad drops off and you feel like you're practically prying them out of dad's arms, or vice versa.
It's weird because I have one kid who will get dropped off by dad and he will have the worst drop off ever, crying for 10 minutes. Mom drops him off. Worst thing ever. Mom and dad drop him off together. He's a whole different kid. It was just one day where I think he had a bad night where both of them dropped off and he was a little sad. But it's just like, wait, how does this happen? Just something in their head that, okay, mom and dad are both dropping me off. They're both gonna come back. It's just odd. Like what goes through their head?
We made Mother's Day gifts, and I put like names facing out with a picture of the child on each one, and I had 3 dads pick up and take the wrong one home. Like, it has your child's face on it. I don't know how this happened. They don't normally pick up.
Happy Mother's Day from somebody else's child.
This is not my child.
This is when they cry. Dad, this isn't me. How did you do this?
Oh, that's cute. All right, well, steps for building routines and outcomes. So when we are talking about building those routines and that we have a specific outcome in mind, we want to identify and explain the value of the preferred activity and the routine. We want to make sure that we're talking about and that we're learning about the child's preference and that family expectation. That conversation that Ryan had with mom about the child's routine and what mom wanted from us. So it was a great first step in meeting mom, in the middle and making sure that the outcome benefits and supports the child. Observe care providers in routines with children. We want to make sure that we have identified outcomes appropriate for the routine. We want to specify strategies and sequences, And then we definitely always make sure that you're gathering feedback and that you are monitoring that progress being made. Okay, so what are some barriers to schedules and routines? Well, sometimes it can be hard when you have a mixed age group. We just talked about that with our primary classrooms. 3s, 4s, 5s, and we have a couple of 6-year-olds. That is a large age range. And you've got some that, have a full academic day, and then you've got some that, have like a 2-hour work cycle, and then, some that take naps, some that do not, they just have maybe a quiet period. There's multiple dynamics that can really play, just kind of a barrier in that building that schedule and routine. What it requires is teachers to be able to, to identify that possible barrier and be preemptive, and understanding that dynamic, One caregiver for multiple children. So, that can really be, a lot of times we hear about the nanny share. And I don't know a whole lot, like how many babies that is, what that dynamic looks like. But in my mind, the term nanny share, I'm like, okay, so does that mean that one day the nanny comes to your house and then the next day the nanny is at a different house and you take the baby, but is it multiple locations? Is it, is baby sleeping in their own environment, or are they sleeping in somebody else's environment? I mean, there can be some dynamics where that can definitely create a barrier. A child who does not provide signals for their caregiver. And, there are children out there that will let us know the minute that they are hungry. They're crying, they're angry, they're grumpy, maybe they're a little whiny. But what about the child that doesn't have those cues, those signals? Okay. Limited planning time. I know every single teacher in this room says that's a barrier, not having enough planning time, right? And then either your co-teacher or your parents are not on the same page as you when it comes to building that routine, and that can definitely be a barrier. When you are trying to create a schedule and a routine, and grandparent comes in and is, has that mindset that no, children do not have routines, So that can definitely create a barrier. And then of course cultural differences. Some families do have different dynamics, and I know that in some cases it can be a really really hard conversation for some people to have. In some cultures, children are fed by the parents up until the age of 4, and then they come to a program like ours where we're all about empowering and self-help skills, and it can really throw the child in the middle of that tailspin. So, any other barriers that you guys think that you have possibly ever experienced? Marlon?
My first preschool class, I only had 3 English as a first language speakers. That was really, really hard because we had Mandarin, Amharic, Arabic, Punjabi, Farsi, and everyone spoke 2 or 3 languages in their home, but their home language, and I don't speak any of them.
Right.
And they all the kids through play, they communicate. But when it came to me trying to say, go wash your hands, so
Yeah.
a lot of
Definite visual classroom, right? Yeah, I could definitely see, pictures everywhere. And thank goodness, that visuals are kind of a universal language, because working with, in my experience, I had a girl who spoke, she only spoke German. Mom and dad actually were very fluent in English, but the children were not, and literally moved out of Germany, came to the States, and it just broke my heart that even the small amount of words that I was speaking to her, it's okay, hug, mommy, daddy, come back. They gave me some words for my toolbox. but to see her staring out the window and just, crying and not wanting to be consoled, she had a bubble, it can really, really be hard to have her feel included or a part of our schedule and our daily dynamics, so. All right, so we are going to move into the next video, which is nap time with Cradleboard. This is a child care provider who partnered with a child's family in problem solving at nap time. Okay? I love watching that video because it's just, I love that this woman took the time to know a little bit more and understand a little bit more about the family, about their cultural background. A simple question, and that she found out that a grandparent had passed down this family item, and look at how well she slept too. So, and then just so that we're all aware, so in Colorado, when a cultural practice used by a family does not meet licensing standards, there is an appeal process. So every licensee has a right to submit an appeal that would demonstrate a hardship to the family, the child, or the community if they were not allowed to observe this practice. So promoting independence. So when we talk about daily routines, we are talking about independent skills and empowering the children in that classroom. So here we also have the resource website that you can read, Teaching Your Child to Become Independent with Daily Routines. Okay, so young children can learn how to do simple daily self-help activities. They just need to be taught. And sometimes I think we don't realize how often we actually are doing that. So we teach children to cough into their elbow and and then to get a tissue and wipe their nose and then afterwards wash their hands. Those are self-help skills. Teaching a child actually how to unpack their lunchbox and set their meal table and then put their containers away when they're done, clean up their placemat. Those are self-help skills. Being able to put on their coat. How often are we teaching them how to put on their coat? Again, a self-help skill. And so when you're teaching a child to do a self-care skill, you need to know what you can typically expect of a young child, so you need to know their skill level. Make sure that it's, we wouldn't be teaching an infant how to, how to put their coat on and flip it over their head. So, so always make sure that it is developmentally appropriate for that age. Okay? So when we're supporting mobile infants and toddlers, with independent skills, we want to think about different opportunities. So from 8 to 18 months, these are some really multiple areas where we can really be teaching that independence. And we start working with our children, with learning to hold a cup or feed themselves. Infants are constantly taking their socks and shoes off. We, work with them and talk them through it into understanding how to put that sock and shoe back on. We talk about body parts. Where's your nose? Where's your belly button? Where are your toes? They can have strong feelings and begin saying no. We do have that stage. We all know about that one. And then feel a sense of security with routines and expectations. They'll imitate sounds and movement. And we know that we can do that because infants, I've noticed that so many more parents think it's the cutest, and it is the cutest thing in the world, but I just thought it was just the funniest thing that, I've got older infants that do knuckle bumps. That's a parent invitation. So, understand more than they can say. Absolutely, children absolutely 100% can understand more than they can say. They're still figuring out their vocabulary skills. They're still understanding their learning dynamics, and that cognitive language development is going to happen. So pumping up full of all of that information and it's like we're stockpiling it so that when they're ready to start articulating that verbally, it's going to happen. It's going to be an explosion of knowledge. When we talk about an 18-month to a 36-month, This is where we can start giving directions, and we've seen that. We have 18-month-olds where we say, okay, we're gonna have lunch. Where do we go to wash our hands? You know, and keep in mind, remember too, it's always beneficial to ask open-ended questions rather than yes, no. You know, we already know that children know how to say no, and that they know how to say yes. But asking an open-ended question allows the child to have to formulate, have to articulate the response that we're looking for, okay? Drinking from a straw, feeding with a spoon, using the toilet, bending over without falling or bumping their heads, imitating simple actions. So all of these different dynamics are things that we can expect from being taught independent skills. When we get to the preschool age group, then, of course, then this is, again, we talked about learning and having routines at home as well as school. So dressing and undressing is definitely a dynamic that we want to help support children through. When we saw the video of the little girl and mom wanted her to get her dress on and she did not want to put that dress on. But if this was a dynamic where she was able to choose her dress and show mom how, you know, how big she was to be able to get herself dressed, if that's the routine that they're creating, you know, that exchange would have been a very different dynamic. Hanging their coat up, using the toilet, washing their hands. We always have helpers in the classroom, so being a helper. You know, we call our helpers, we have the electrician, we have the carpenter, we have the, we call them, you know, by their career name, you know, in the classroom, which I think is great. It helps to teach them, you know, responsibility and following directions, understanding those dynamics. And then, of course, you know, those basic healthcare needs too. Brushing your teeth, cleaning up, completing chores, always good. And remember that you have resources, you have these documents provided, it's handout 8.2 and 8.3 in your packets. So, so you can actually visit the website, or the packets were also provided for you as well. And the first one is called Making Life Easier, that's the diapering handout. And then the second handout is What Works Brief, helping children understand routines and classroom schedules. So now we're going to talk about developing a daily schedule. So we want to talk about the length of activities. We want to make sure that it's consistent with their attention span. We certainly don't want to do a 30-minute activity with toddlers. And we don't want to do an hour. A lot of times we think that because children, you know, they get older, that you can have more time with them. That will backfire. So, you know, you can do the appropriate amount of time based off of you knowing your children in your classroom. Teacher directed should always be shorter than 20 minutes for the preschool age. And again, we talked about that balance throughout the day. Make sure that it's quiet, it's active, it's child directed, it's teacher directed, and that it's small groups versus large groups. Make sure that your experiences are in all areas of development. Make sure that you've got all patterns of learning. Social, cognitive, language, motor. Teach children the schedule and review it daily. That habit and that repetition is going to build for, you know, that the goal and that expected outcome of, you know, positive behavior. And then establish a routine, follow it consistently, and then when changes are necessary, prepare them in advance. So we're going to do an activity where we're going to balance the daily schedule. All right, we're going to take about 5 minutes, and we're going to do this as a small group. You have your handouts, 8.4, which is balance the daily schedule, or home responsive routines. And then 8.5 is the daily routine assessment. And then I want you to look at handout 8.4. You're going to read the directions. Then I want you to fill in your schedule in the left-hand column. And you don't have to worry about transitions as part of your schedule. So after filling in your daily schedule, rate each activity based on the dimension of the activity level, the directedness, and the group size. So try to pick the primary dimension for each activity. So let me give you an example. do not rate circle as active and passive because children are sitting in a group but also singing songs and participating, okay? All right, then wait to fill out the right column. We're not gonna fill out the right column on this activity right now. So, and then the take-home activity routines within routines, which is page 2, you're gonna write down the routine per activity that are established in the environment that you work in. Okay, so we're only gonna fill out the first page with the exception of the embedding and the intentional teaching column. That'll be completed in session 13. And then the few pages that are, the next few pages are take-home activities for you to work and complete at a later time. Okay? Any questions? That's a lot of instructions. Any questions?
And not the embedding.
Great. Okay. All right, let's do 5 minutes to write and then we'll do 5 minutes to discuss. Okay, so how did that work out? Building that daily schedule and balancing that daily schedule. Did it seem easy? Did it seem like there was some struggle?
Easy.
Easy? Yeah. Do you feel like this is something new that you've created for your classroom, or do you feel like this is what you feel like you've got a good groove and this is already something you're doing in your classroom?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody wanna, Marlon?
The first time we did this, I was like, ooh gosh, my schedule didn't go at work. Because it was very, very stimulating. And now coming back to it, writing down the changes we've made, I was like, yeah, there's a pretty good balance.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Actually, I agree with that too, because I did switch my nap and my lunch
Yeah,
because of this.
that's right, you did.
I felt like this, we're
And it was
going
like
from outside
Yeah,
to nap.
yeah.
It's too arousing
Yeah.
to go to.
Yeah.
So it was nice.
Well,
It
good.
made
I'm
a
glad that,
difference.
these provided a lot of, that insight. That's fantastic. Okay, so here we have an example of our LEAP daily schedule, which is handout 8.6, which you have with your handouts. Arrival, circle time centers, story time, snack, small groups, outside, motor and movement, and then goodbye. Okay, so make sure that the preschool day should include activities that give children an experience in all areas of development. And this schedule was built on a preschool LEAP model that's based on a 3-hour school day. But when designing your daily schedule, it can be helpful to write out what your child expectations are for each activity. And then that just helps with, giving teachers that empowerment to feel like they can carry out those activities in a consistent way. So now we're going to talk about routines within routines within routines. So when you are planning and you determine the sequence in each daily activity, you want to make sure that you're maintaining that predictability and consistency to help promote the independence. And then there's collaboration and communication with your co-teachers because you're not the only person in the room. You got to support each other. So make sure that you are having that conversation with your co-teacher and other professionals who participate in the learning environment. Sometimes we have enrichment teachers and resource teachers as well. And then make sure that everybody's on the same page as far as understanding the sequence of that routine, and then reinforce children for following through with the routines and participating in the scheduled activities. Okay, so I'm going to show you what an example of a routine within a routine within a routine looks like. So we have our daily schedule that we just worked on, and we have our drop-off time, we have our table time, and then we go right into our opening circle. But now opening circle opens up a whole another routine where when we come into our large group opening circle, we have our greeting song, and then we work on our calendar, we have our child choice song, lessons, and then we're choosing our learning centers. But before we get into these areas, we go into the calendar has a routine. So when we get to calendar learning, we're clapping the month, we're singing the days of the week song, we're going to add today to the calendar, we're going to make sure that our motor cue, but our pattern and our review is all being practiced while we're working on our calendar learning, okay? So does it make sense? Routine within a routine within a routine, okay? Good, great. So each layer of the routine should always answer the following. What am I doing now? Where am I in the routine? And how do I know when I'm finished? And then what comes next? So when you're planning each layer of that routine, just assess where you're at in that cue. Good? All right. Before we move to the next slide, tell me why you think it would be important for you to ask yourself these questions. This is an impromptu question here.
I think so you won't have a big gap between the routines and the kids going all over the place because they don't know what's next. Like if you give them a big time gap, so if you're done with breakfast and it's like bathroom, but if you don't do it there, you give them too much time, so they go to different centers and then you have to gather them up again and take them to the bathroom, so.
Great. How often are we having to rein everybody back in because I didn't prepare for this next transition, I've got a gap,
It's like that mom with the baby in the bath time. She got everything ready in advance, so she wouldn't have to, disrupt the routine. So that it
Exactly.
would be consistent.
Oh yeah, because if baby was in the tub
The mom had to leave.
and mom had to,
Because-
even just step over here to grab the soap, what could then happen? And she didn't have to leave the room. Maybe she just, she had her arm under baby's head and back, holding and supporting him up. But she had to move to go and grab the soap because she hadn't prepared for her routine.
Right,
then
or even if she had to
baby
take
could
him out of
slip.
the water. you
Right,
know,
baby
he
could-
would, that would be disruptive to him and he would be cold and, slippery.
And he would be very mad, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too that they're really trying to focus on, if you remember from a couple slides ago where it talked about having a clear beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And then it is important to add on to that what comes next, because that's that predictability piece, right? Children need to have predictability of what's gonna happen to me, right? It's just like when we are driving and we get pulled over by the police and we're like,
Oh, yeah.
what did I do,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes we know and we're like, shoot, right? But sometimes we're just going about our time, right? And here he pulls us over and our first question is what did I do, right? And then knowing what's gonna come after that's gonna be, the ticket, right?
Yeah.
So, I think predictability is a huge component of layering routines.
Yeah.
Because then it's easier for them to follow within a routine because they can predict what they're supposed to be doing, where are they in the particular routine that they're at, they know when they're gonna be finished, and they know what comes next. And that coincides with when we set expectations with children,
Yeah.
when we model transitions with children, all of those pieces mold together for kids to know where they are in time and space and what they should be doing.
Yeah.
It lends to being confident and competent in your teaching too. I mean, you're gonna have a better outcome with your teaching if you're prepared that way.
If you're
you
preparing
know.
yourself, absolutely. Yeah. Adrienne?
So like with our routine, we have a teacher who comes in on my days off and my co-teacher's days off. And he doesn't follow our routine, so on those days, the kids are, it's like complete chaos. And we hear it from everybody, like we hear it from teachers passing by, we hear it from our EC, we hear it from Lindy, like that.
Parents probably too?
Yeah, that is completely chaotic because he doesn't follow routines, he lets them do absolutely whatever they want. So to get them back into routine, like on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays, it's a little bit harder, you know? And the kids will even tell us like, oh, Mr. Tack let us do this and this, but we didn't like that. Like, you know, like, or so-and-so,
They
like,
really value their routines.
Mhm.
They thrive.
Bless you.
It's a comfort level, you know, it's a security dynamic. So absolutely, absolutely. So, all right, so visual cues. So just to get us out of our chairs for just a second, let's stand up if you have some sort of visual component in your classroom that helps children with schedules and routines. Great. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Just a little stretch there. Get us out of our seats. Yep. Good job, Lisa. Okay, what I would like for you to share, anyone that stood up, I'd like for you to share what was the driving force around creating that visual cue for yourself, for your classroom. Right.
So what we have is on our door, we have like a door with a top and a bottom. And when the top is open and the bottom is closed, on that ledge right there, we have circles that are color-coded with each child's name. And so when there's a bottle on their circle, they know usually when they get their bottle, and they know like if there's a bowl to go to the table. So they watch the ledge. If there's ever food or a bottle there, they know what's next.
Well, that is really ingenious.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you. And our motivation was just organization. Like
Yeah.
before that, we just had bottles and stuff all over the ledge, and we had to talk to each other like, okay, wait, who does this go to? But if one person, like if a teacher from the kitchen puts it on the child's name and it's already color coded, then I know which child it goes to.
Great.
So our motivation was just organization, but we didn't realize the impact it'd have on the kids too.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes back to that children understand way more than they can articulate. And so that's fantastic. I love that. Anybody else? Martha?
I came from preschool where I worked with a lot of English as a second language and special needs. When I moved out here, I ended up working in TODS, and I felt like I wasn't really prepared for TODS, and then I realized all of the extra efforts and the prep and the visual cues and the personal plans that I had made for my children that needed more help, they were so impactful on my kids that were learning those same skills.
Yeah.
They're developmentally, they're on the same level, and in my head I'm like, this is a preschool thing, this is a plan for an older child, but that older child was right there with my TODS. So it was not hard at all to just bring that in and just tone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's made a huge impact.
Good. Great. Alex?
So when I came to my class last October, we had transitioning teachers leaving, you know, they're trying to find teachers for this classroom. So when I came in there, we had, you know, all these visual cues, the photos of where the toys go and this and that. Since then, we've been having a lot of struggles finding new teachers, you know, so I've been in there, and because I've never been in a preschool room, I'm still trying to get into that mode.
Yeah.
So, you know, along these few months, we have the pictures and the kids go put the toys there, but they don't go there anymore. You know, so it really throws them off when you don't have those visual cues. So I've been going through the classroom and trying to flip this around.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because it's funny, they'll put it here, it's like, this is where trains go. But I'm sorry guys, you know, this is where the train center is over here.
Yeah.
You're gonna put it on the phone block picture. But like, but this isn't the picture.
Right.
You need to put the picture with the block. So having those things for them is a key point, so
Yeah.
they can, you know, learn those names, and especially with the
And they're
text.
challenging because it's confusing for them.
It is. They're like, wait, what? But this is
This
supposed to
doesn't
go
make
over
sense.
here.
Yeah.
So we're in the mode of moving visuals and getting the visuals back in.
Good. Well, that is what we're talking about, is how important those visual cues can really be in our classrooms. So, it's objects, it's photos, it's symbols, it's drawings. In our older classrooms, it's words, it's text. Text can have pictures with them, and it can be a horizontal picture, it can be a vertical picture. It's your creativity level. Just keep the consistency for the children. Visual systems they should be embedded throughout your day and across all routines and activities. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of those visual objects that create a schedule. So using real objects, because that's what the children will see in the classroom. So diapers, wipes, we know that we're going to a diaper change, we're gonna wash our hands, we're gonna have our breakfast when we see the cup, and then we're gonna do some music when we see the maracas. Okay? Here we have a classroom schedule, and if the child or the children are ready for a picture or a photograph schedule, you can consistently match pictures or photographs. Some individuals find photos easier to recognize, while others do better with line drawings. You can either draw these yourself, or you can use, computer-generated pictures. Okay, the Taxi website and Head Start Inclusion website have a lot of pictures for you to choose from.
Can I just say that I love that has scribbles on it?
Because it's real life,
Right?
Exactly.
That is how it is in a classroom. Nothing is perfect.
Love it.
So we've got more here. So we've talked about this before, about incorporating photos of our children in our classrooms. So we have our greeting on the playground, we have our playground time, then we go into our story time, then we have our small group. Here we have a Velcro book where we have the bus is going to pick us up, then we have our learning times, then we do our circle time, and the child can just open the pages to see what activity comes next. Over here we have name columns, and then we've got the schedule. I love too that they have a timer up here. So especially when you have those centers that are really popular and everybody wants a turn, the timer is very helpful. It was yesterday I noticed, so I had put new material out in Miss Debbie's classroom, and it was the kids were so excited that she pulled out a dry erase board so that they could write their name on the next turn list. So that visually they could see, okay, I'm after Luca, and I'm before Alice. So I thought that was really great. It's a great visual for them, especially when it comes to learning patience. So now we've got another video that we're going to watch. So we just reviewed some critical elements of a daily visual schedule. Now we're going to look at an example of a teacher using her visual schedule. Okay. So what do we think of the surprise?
Exciting.
Yeah, the little girl is like,
Oh yeah, she got all excited and started clapping. Have you thought about that? Has anyone that's worked on making a visual schedule, has anyone had to modify their schedule?
Yeah, we've had to modify.
Yeah. And have you modified it like with like a surprise, or just modifications just based off of the dynamic of the day
That, we did that.
yeah,
We didn't really have a surprise.
no,
Yet.
yet. There's always room for surprise. Okay. And anything else in the video that you feel like really added to the value of that group dynamic?
She went over it with the kids.
Yeah.
So that they know.
Yeah.
Which they did know.
They did.
And then she also told them what to expect.
Right.
The thing that catches my eye, and I'm telling on myself here, is that it's at the children's eye level.
Yeah.
Where it's more interactive.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that that we've talked about before, especially in I don't think it's just a Bright Horizon thing, it's an early childhood dynamic where materials should always be, that we want the children to be a part of and interact with. Those things should always be at children's eye level. A lot of times we feel like we do need to, embed the room with all these visual stimulations, but when you have a 1-year-old, I mean, looking way up to the top of the wall or the ceiling can be be a little hard for them, so.
Well, they don't
yeah.
have maybe the perspective you're trying to offer them either,
Mhm. It could
when
be,
they are doing it.
It could be scary for them too.
Mhm.
You know, like when, especially for like lunchtime, you know, if they're sitting at lunch and they're snacking, you're just standing above them, you know, you're looking down on them, they're just like,
yeah.
wait, you know, so having those things way up there can just be like, I don't know what's going on. This is frightening.
Yeah.
Put it back to where I am.
Yeah, very good point. Okay. So when we modified the visual schedule, you know, we just, like she said, she just had, you know, raindrops sitting over this yellow car. And her schedule is it doesn't have to be overthought, it doesn't have to be a large process. I mean, she has, if you look at it closely, she has Polaroid pictures. And then it has, well, it looks like a Polaroid picture. It might just actually be a picture on, you know, on a computer that, you know, she cropped onto it and then she cut it out. And then it has the word underneath the picture. So this one says morning circle, centers, cleanup, and then just a simple indicator, raindrops. So they knew it was raining outside and they knew that that was going to change their, I would imagine, their outdoor recess time. All right, so we're going to put it into practice. We're going to do a small group activity where I would like for you to elect a reader, a recorder, and then a reporter. And we're going to talk about how will the use of a visual schedule resolve the conflict noted in the scenario. Okay, and then I want you to be prepared to share back. So in the so there are scenarios where a visual schedule could be used to address the issue. You're each going to have an activity, and then you're going to discuss how a visual schedule will resolve the conflict noted in the scenario that I give you. Okay, and then we'll share back with the group. Any questions on this activity? Okay, great.
That's gonna happen is at some point, the lack of what he gets in the home is going to catch up, and he's gonna be like, no, Mom, I don't want the diaper because I go on the potty. So he's going to begin to take on the routines that you're exposing him to day after day. And it will replace some of that lack of participation on their part, and it's frustrating, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be frustrating and overwhelming, but as long as you know that everything that you're doing is what's best for him, at some point, and you'll see it revert, and he won't want to, and then he'll start to put that level of, frustration on his parents because he gets it at school and he won't want it anymore.
Like even though he's in a diaper, like for diaper changes, I'm like, I'm like, take off your diaper, you're not supposed to do it.
Washington,
No,
California,
and I'm like,
Indiana,
well, you need to,
Illinois.
here, I'll help you with one, you do the other, and he'll do it. And I'm like, go potty. No, I'm like, I know you can do it, you're
In New
before.
York, my brother lives in New York.
And he'll
So
stand
like
and
that's the
eat.
wedding party, and I'm like,
But
so
he's
he's
not
expect you guys to like come
He's
here
almost
for
potty trained up. But the thing is that they go back and forth. And I'm just
do your best.
I'm like, no.
Are we on?
Did she say something more, Michelle?
We're good? Okay. Okay, so let's do these together. Each group had a reporter. So let's talk about, it's time for circle. One little boy roams away from the circle. When you try to guide him to circle, he drops to the ground and he will not budge. So what would you teach?
We figured a buddy for him.
Buddy.
You know, taking him to the calendar wherever they have it to be like, hey, you know, this is what we're gonna do next, guys, you know, kind of like a teacher helper kind of thing. But helping his friends too, okay, here, we're gonna go outside, you know, come with me, we're gonna go get the rope together, do it together, and hopefully that would make him comfort, because not just helping the child, but the helper, all kids wanna do is help you.
Right.
You know, they
They love being
feel
helpers.
empowered, they feel like, oh my God, I did something to help my teacher, like that makes me feel so special, so special.
Absolutely. So how would you teach that?
Well, on the, to piggyback onto that, we kind of came up with two things. So not only the buddy, but we gave the kid that drops to the ground the job of the
announcers.
two
So the buddy would take him to the
I'm
calendar,
taking a smaller
and the kid that drops
And
would
the stuff
be
that
the
they
one
want.
that says, okay,
and
this
he
is
said,
time for
if I
circle
didn't
time or
need to
whatever.
pay all night,
So he got to do
I
something
would,
special
I
as well.
would stay.
Yeah. And any dynamic that, for, like a visual
He was
cue
good.
for him?
He was
You showing, you know, having a picture, you know, of them
Yes.
helping, or, you know, have another set of kids show them how to do it, or, you know, even yourself show them how to do it.
Yeah, so he's going to the visual schedule
Yeah.
to say, look, it's
Yeah.
now circle time.
Perfect, perfect, all right. How about our little friend that tries to run out the door?
So we thought of using an object to kind of implement when it's time, when it's circle time and then transition to, okay, it's time to go outside. So we thought of like a little circle that they can sit on.
Mm-hmm.
And then once circle time is over, you go and put the circle in the basket and then you're going outside. So kind of give her that visual cue of
Okay.
our circles we're gonna sit on our circles, and once our circles are gone, then we can go out.
Great. Great. How about this one? A child goes to play with her favorite train. When you go over to tell her it's time for snacks, she starts screaming and throwing pieces.
I would give her warning, like, it's 5 minutes, you know, like.
Use the timer.
Use a timer.
Yeah.
Maybe talk to her about snack too, like, what do you have for snack? You know, get her engaged prior to the actual,
Even if she is like a snack helper, you know, like.
yeah.
what's
Oh, we
a good
need you to,
activity?
yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
And maybe if she's like, if she knows, like if you're ending an activity and going into snack, and she's just like, well, no one's really looking, I'm gonna go find my train, making sure, like Dulce said, that when it's time for that activity, like you start it, there's not that little window of, oh, now they're doing things I don't want them to do. Like making sure they have 1 or 2 steps to get to snack table, like instead of having time to go to the train, should she be washing her hands?
All right, we have a little boy arrives in your classroom and he's so scared. When mommy says bye, he screams, he cries, he pulls on her leg, he tries to come up mommy's body. What would we do?
Let them know, you know, give mama one more kiss, give her one more hug, you know, she's gonna come back, you know, give her a push out the door. If that doesn't work, sometimes the handoff, you know, you just gotta get the handoff and just take the kid, and usually they calm down within a few minutes and be like, oh, look, you know, I gotta feed the fish, come help me with this, or, you know, oh, I need your help with this, and nobody else can help me, you know, taking their mind off of this. Because, I mean, even with my kids 3 and 4, they still have a little time, you know, or mom will say, okay, I'll read you 1 book, and then I'm gonna go.
Yep.
Or we'll go look at the goggles, and then I'm gonna go.
There's 2 things that I think of. First thing that I would do is totally get down on that kiddo's level, down on my knees to talk to him. And second thing is if you actually have something exciting that's set up on a table, like,
Provocation?
yeah, look at that dollhouse, you know, that, something like that would kind of draw kids in, hopefully.
I like, one of the things I do is I have kids who will, help me with things. Like, oh, I need you to help me sign in some friends, can you come over and here, why don't you find your picture around here, or find somebody else's picture and you can check them in.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off Lisa and Debbie, like, when we have hard drop-offs, like, they look at our hamster, and they wanna see if the hamster's awake or if it's asleep, you know?
Oh.
And then other ones wanna check in, like, they wanna check in on the iPad.
Oh.
And a lot of them will, because they're nocturnal, so they're
Yeah.
not awake, you know, so they'll knock on the little thing and he'll poke his little head out and like he'll come down because he hears the kids, so, yeah.
That's so cute. All right, well, really great ideas, and hopefully, as, I love sharing as a collaborative group because we can always take ideas back home with us to our own classroom, so. I don't know if you can talk me into getting an animal or a hamster for the classrooms, but I know, this one is
Lisa,
dying for an
So
animal.
you're responsible for
We
it.
have fish. So, remember that all of these great ideas that we've come up with, anything that we can do to help to support the child in the classroom, we also want to make sure that we're partnering with families and that we are supporting them as well. So we want to give them ideas that they can take home and use at home. So here's a visual of, helping parents to prep their child for a routine and a visual schedule for getting ready in the morning. I remember so many times as a mom, trying to get my child up and ready and dressed and fed, and then we're all in the car, and then I gotta drop her off, and I know it's still gonna take me 20 minutes to get to work, and so I just spent so much time constantly hurrying her and rushing her, and what was her natural inclination? She's gonna drag her feet. I'm not gonna rush just because you're yelling at me to rush. But once I realized that I needed to allow her to make the decisions on, how she wanted to get ready and what steps that looked like for her, it was a completely different scenario. And it really made a difference. I love the idea though of a visual, so the cards are, Velcro, so get dressed, okay, we did it, turn that card over. Get shoes on, perfect, okay. Brush our hair. Okay, once we brush our hair, then we can have a little bit of TV time. And then we get our school stuff and we say goodbye. We get in the car, we go to school. Now in this situation, I would even say to help to support some of those children who have a really hard time with separation, I would add, go to school and then, maybe have one in the car that just says, okay, then we're going to say goodbye to mom, or we'll read one book, then we'll say goodbye to mom, and then we're gonna go and learn. Maybe add in a visual for that as well to help with that classroom dynamic. Okay? And the teaching tools for young children with challenging behavior, so this is where these visual pictures came from. So I would like to give credit for that. Ingenious materials. So we remember this video, this is our little friend. And we are watching a video of a mom attempting to get her daughter dressed. And I want you to just watch for the behavior, because then we will group together and we will discuss some dynamics of what we saw. So, what triggered the behavior? Not having to get dressed. And what's the challenging behavior that we're observing in this video?
Reluctance, or being reluctant to get dressed.
Yeah.
Stiffening, arching.
Screaming, arching, kicking, running away from mom. Exactly.
Pulling her hair.
Yeah, she kind of pulled her around, yep. And so what happens after the child behaves that way? What happens?
Becomes a game.
Becomes a game. Yeah.
I think mom confused it because she said she started making it into a game too.
Yeah.
And that's when it's like, well, she's gonna think you're playing.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing though?
I think it is if it's not consistent in getting that child to do what the expected behavior is. Like she was encouraging her to run away when she said, I'm gonna get you. But if she's gonna make it a game like, oh, I wonder how long it'll take you to get your dress on.
Yeah.
That's a good game, because she's learning to do what you're expecting.
Right, because I think in this situation, for me, I don't want to be kicked. I don't want you to, push against me and run away from me if it's disrespectful. And I think that's that fine line where we need to be teaching children, we can make this fun, but we still need to be respectful. We need to be kind. And in the minute that she behaved that way, and then was standing there kind of taking a deep breath, then mom turned it into the game, and now she was completely justified with that behavior.
Right.
And so what's gonna happen the next time mom asks her to get dressed? Probably do the exact same thing. Yeah. And so, so it's kind of the dynamic of what you've been talking about with Rochelle today, is, Dulce, is that with a child that if there's no consistency, if it's one day it's this and then the next day it changes, well, we're expecting this child to understand our expectation when there's just a lack of consistency, between home and school and even in the car, or there's no lesson taught. It's just the environment is created so that there can't be, a behavioral outburst, So they've dictated the environment, so that they've controlled the environment. So instead of, teaching not to go out the classroom door or not to go out the house door, we just lock the doors. So that inconsistency is why we're seeing those behaviors. And is it gonna happen overnight for this little girl? No, not at all. It's gonna take mom a little bit of time to teach her, that routine. Okay, in the morning, we get up, we have breakfast, and we do this, and then we do, and get the visual cue cards out if we have to. And I agree with Debbie, make it a game, make it fun. It doesn't have to be boring with the children. It's just what we're trying to eliminate is that behavior, because that behavior is just going to keep building. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to the store with you. I don't want to go here. And then we see, where. Do you remember the video of Brendan when they were walking into the library and he was laying on the ground? So ultimately, if we're not creating those dynamics with that consistency of routine, that expectation, that predictability, that understanding of what's coming next, then it escalates from this dynamic to a larger scale dynamic. So,
and I think we could build in a few choices into that as well. Like,
yeah.
Well, maybe you don't like this dress. What dress do you want?
Absolutely.
Let them.
They don't realize it, but by empowering them, it's also a reward system for them. You get to go and pick out what you want to wear today.
And maybe it's just for filming, but do you often get dressed in the living room? Probably
True.
not. Maybe we could have done this in the bedroom. Maybe you can get dressed with mom, or maybe you can, not only pick your clothes, but pull them out of where your clothes are. Because are you gonna get dressed in the living room every single morning? If not, go to where that happens.
Right.
Going off of what Marley just said, not even just, pulling it out, but that gets them in the habit of getting dressed every day. If you start young, let them pick out their clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's just it's not gonna have you any problems, and not just that, but it's gonna teach them, you're also teaching them something.
I love when kids pick out their own clothes.
I
Even
do
though
too.
it's matched, but it's
Yeah.
like, that's what they chose, and like, they're so proud of themselves that
I
they
hear
pick
that.
what they're
I
wearing
hear that every
today.
morning.
Like, they don't have
She
to
picked
wear
them out.
things that are matched. If they wore the calico socks with the black pants and the taupe calico shirt, hey,
And the cowboy
Shorts on
the
top of
cowboy
it.
boots,
Yeah.
right? Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, because they're so proud of themselves that they dress themselves, and you didn't fight with them for 20 minutes to get dressed. Hallelujah. You just made it an independent activity.
Exactly. Okay. So one of the dynamics around the family routine, which is available, the family routine available in the Positive Solutions for Families on CEPL. So why might my child be doing this? Well, they're refusing to participate in the routine because it becomes a game. You get to chase him or her, and they get your attention. What can I do to prevent the problem? Well, you can signal your child ahead of time. Use a warning. Let them know that it'll soon be time to stop and to get dressed or undressed. Depending on your child's ability, you can use a timer. We talked about a timer, a verbal signal by saying 5 more minutes. Let's get back to your child. And then, and then go back to your child to let them know when it's 1 more minute. What can I do if the problem behavior occurs? If your child runs away or acts silly, or ignores, you turn off the TV or you shut the door once the child is in the room you want him to be in. You use a wait time, give your child an instruction calmly, and then wait at least 4 seconds before repeating it. What are some new skills that I should teach my child? Teach your child how to follow your warnings. Teach your child how to follow first, then statements. First get dressed, then we get to watch TV. So it's that, that first get dressed, and then we'll go to the park, whatever that dynamic looks like. We don't even know, like, was she going to school, was she going outside, did they have errands to run, but any of that dynamic, that program and teaching the children even at home makes it easier for them to understand. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure as to which environment is going to be easier building the routines. I think because they're with us for 8, maybe 9 hours a day, I think they tend to follow our routines a little faster than they do with mom and dad, because mom and dad do tend to slip up a little more frequently when it comes to routines and consistencies, or turning it into a game. But once we've established that dynamic, I think going back and partnering with these families, teaching our parents what routine and consistency looks like, and encouraging that dynamic. I know that parents are always so heartbroken when they see their child, upset at drop off, but letting them know this would help if we did ABC.
Well, and I think it's in the delivery too. So the approach that I always think works well with families is, instead of telling, we want them to just come about it. So talking to parents a lot about, the class is working on this specific strategy right now, and this is what we've been working on. And then they're like, hey, I wonder if that would work at home too, right? So instead of us saying, I need you to partner with me and I need you to do this at home so we can keep it consistent at school, right? That plays into that wall of my parental control and my parent competency, where if you're going through it and you're saying, here's some things that we've been working on at school, and I know that Johnny is really starting to get used to our routine, and leaving it at that, that's a subliminal way, right? Just like ads on the television subliminally convince us that we need to buy that one thing, right? Is that they then are like, well, I wonder if that would work when we're doing this. And then that partnership, and that works really well for parents that we butt heads with a lot, that just don't seem to want to partner with what we're doing. Because at the same time, when you send them your little emails, or you send them pictures of their kids working through a routine, yes, there may be a little bit of jealousy that plays into that, gosh, I wish I could get them to do that when it's time to brush their teeth at night. And they're like, I'm gonna try this just for giggles, and then they realize it. So sometimes it's not even really partnering in the sense of saying, hey, let's put these into practice at home, but just really letting them know the things that you're doing in your classroom, and not specific even to their child, but this is a strategy we're working on right now with our class, right? Because then you're not targeting their kid has a problem either, right? It's something we're teaching, and they're like, oh, is that what they teach at school? Right? So it's all in how you deliver some of that messaging to your families, especially when you work with families that tend to be a little bit more difficult, can really work in that child's favor. And that's the important thing to remember, that it's not in our favor as the educator, but it works in that child's favor.
Right.
So, like, I think it was 3 weeks ago too, one of our parents requested a conference with us because they were very worried that their daughter was doing the same behavior as at home and in school. And it comes out to be that we don't have any of the behavior at school, but she's having meltdowns at home. And it's like, well, what do you guys do? And he's like, I'm like, we don't see it here. I'm like, she doesn't throw herself on the floor, she doesn't have meltdowns. I'm like, but we do have routines. I'm like, she knows that when she walks in that door, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, I'm there, Miss Brianna is there all week at the same time. They know what time I get there. Those days, I'm like, we're always like, good morning. And we're like, come on, we have free play. And then when Ms. Reyna comes in, then, you know, we get ready for breakfast. Come on, let's come in and play. Like, so we have a routine. I'm like, it might help at home because they said that in the morning, she will get up and she'll turn on the TV and they couldn't get her off.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, well, if you have a routine, work with a routine with her, then you'll have less problems and less. I'm like, and when she gets upset, I'm like, when she gets upset here, we have our thinking bench and we have our cozy corner. I'm like, and I tell her, I'm like, okay, you need time to relax and to calm down. You're more than welcome to go to our thinking bench or a cozy corner. I'm like, it might help for you guys to do a cozy corner for you
Yeah.
at home.
Absolutely.
So, just Monday, they came and they're like, we got a cozy corner for her, and it's working. And I was like, wait, thank you. I'm like,
Yeah.
and they're seeing the difference.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm like,
That really makes a difference.
the routines that if they embed routines together with the ones that we have at school, and it's working.
Sometimes with that, parents are like, like, that's ridiculous, like a cozy corner at my house, and like,
It could be a little corner with some throw pillows. It doesn't, I mean, I spend more money on my dog's bed than, you know, it's ridiculous how much I spend, but I mean, a couple of throw pillows. And, you know, something soft and warm or something, you know, a fake plant or, you know, it doesn't have to be,
So I guess
Large.
we went to IKEA and they found some like, what they say, like an egg
oh, yeah,
chair.
yeah.
And that's her cozy corner.
Cute, that's cute.
She came home, when she said, Miss Dulce, I have a cozy corner at home. I'm like, you do? Can I go? And she said, no, it's Abby's. Okay.
Okay. Well, good, I'm glad that, you know, that they're seeing that dynamic in your classrooms, you know, that means you're doing it right. That means you're doing a great job.
You don't see the meltdown.
No, yeah, I mean,
Like,
and parents always did, I'm always worried about how my child behaves at school, and I'm like, your child is an angel, and they're like, like, yeah, at school they are, but that's the underlying, you know, conversation to have is, are there routines at home? You know, so, great job. All right, so then we're gonna head into our major messages. Responsive caregiving is essential for supporting children in their daily routines. And developing predictable routines and schedules helps to reduce challenging behaviors. Plan for routines within the routines and establish a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And then routines and schedules promote independence, okay? We have our activity that we're gonna do now. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes to jot down your thought seeds. I want you to think about what you're gonna change in your behavior in regards to tonight's subject. What will you apply to the families and the children that you work with in regard to schedules and routines? And what will you take back to your co-teachers in regards to schedules and routines, especially the dynamics of the, you know, the co-teacher that may not be on the same page with us, so. Any questions on that activity? That's great.
Please say I'm angry. Don't.
All right,
Scream in
so
your
let's
grandma
talk
in my
about
face.
what went well tonight.
Temperature's good.
Temperature was good.
Participation was phenomenal. It's like-
Phenomenal.
It's like we had a really good understanding.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Marley. Great content.
Yeah.
Education.
Great
resources.
Great content. Thank you, Lisa. And Alex, I'm sorry.
Great resources.
Great resources. Thank you, Dulce.
Well prepared.
Well prepared. Was that you, Marley?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It reinforced like what we already learned, like it
Yeah.
gave us a little bit better understanding to go over straightened it, yes.
Thank you, Adriana. So then what needs improvement?
I was late, so not to be late.
It was great. So.
Nada, nada.
Okay, thank you ladies, have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. The end.
Thank you, have a wonderful night.